Hello, everyone. Welcome to session 2, day 3 of the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum. I'm Lavinia and I am the chair of this session. I am in my day-to-day job. I am a co-founder of Offbeat, and this is a learning space for L&D professionals, right? So in my daily work, I get to talk a lot to other L&Ds. And I have to say, in the last couple of months, probably 25% of the conversations that I've had are about AI. How are L&Ds adopting AI? How is the world adopting AI? How will AI change the way we learn, and how will AI change the role of L&D? So what's certain is that we have lots of questions. I am happy that today we get to spend some time with David Bering, Chief Insights Officer at Fosway Group, to maybe get some answers to these questions. No pressure, David. So David will have a bit of a presentation, and then we'll also have some time at the end for Q&A. So David, the floor is yours. Welcome and good luck.
Thanks, Lavinia. Really appreciate it, the intro. I have quite a melodramatic title to my presentation, and I stole the words "Why It Will Never Be the Same Again" from a guy called David Rowan, who used to be the chief editor for Wired magazine. He used to do a roadshow, pretty much travel the world, finding out what was happening in tech, and said, the world's never going to move this slowly again. And I think we're in that same position for learning. And one of my reflections about AI, because it seems to be changing lots of things. My son pulled out his phone the other day and said he started to record his teacher's lectures because he can get an automated transcript and then get summaries and get flashcards generated from what they say. And so I think there is this sense of, if AI isn't going to transform learning, if we're going to keep doing what it's done and stay on that path, then hey, that's not necessarily a great answer. And what I'm going to do is take you through some general research. We did some partnering at the start of the year with Learning Technologies about our digital learning realities research, which we released in September, 5 infographics. We're going to pick on some of that, but also to help you feel not alone. Every other profession is also experiencing an element of apprehension, excitement, fear, loathing, love for AI, and that's what I'm going to go through. So I'm David Perring. I work with Fosway Group. We're an industry analyst. Unlike other analysts in this space, and I've noticed something chatting through LinkedIn recently, I was a practitioner. I was head of learning solutions and technologies at Virgin Media for many years, and led the learning technology approach. And I joined Fosway because I was interested in trying to influence more people to do more interesting. And I am now Chief Insights Officer, which means I get to talk to wonderful people like Lavinia, wonderful people like Don, also practitioners in large organizations, smaller organizations, and also talk to providers to understand what's happening. And we just try to distill that into our analysis. And what I'm going to do is take you through some of that. As I said, lots of things I'm going to highlight are in the 1, 2, 3, 4th item over here, which is the digital learning realities research we did into AI and its impact today and tomorrow. So it's interesting when people talk about all the research that you do and that Fosway think. No, it's not what Fosway think. This is what you've told us you think. So we're just the intermediary quite often, and we're trying to distill and understand that. But if you want to download any of the infographics that are available, you can go to fosway.com, go to our knowledge center, and fill your boots. It's all free. Back in September, back in the summer, before we were going to do this session, I had a partner in crime called Miles Runham who took me through and helped me talk about this when we were doing our session in London. And Miles is off gallivanting in Vietnam at the moment, so I'm running this show on my own. But I wanted to pick up on one of Miles's favorite quotes from Roy Charles Amara. He was a researcher, scientist, and president for the Institute of the Future. I think it's such a cool institute. I hope it's still going. Sadly, he died in 2007 at the age of 82, so pretty good innings. But he said, we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And I want you to hold on to those words, because even though you may not feel as though it's going to change your world, by the time I get to Roy Charles Amara's age, which isn't that far away, sadly, it is going to have changed our world. And what I'm going to hopefully try and give you a sense of is where we are now and the things you need to be focusing on to shape it in the right way for the future. This is not just about content. But before we get going, Lavinia is going to help us pose this question and give me an indication of what you think the answers are. So, and we've asked this question of people in HR, and I'm going to ask it of you. By 2030, which is only 6 years away, how much of your L&D team's activities could be automated or made redundant by AI and still be effective? Now, still be effective is an important part of the question, because everything could be replaced and be rubbish. So what could still be effective? What proportion of what your L&D team does in terms of its activities, time and effort that it puts in, do you think could be automated or made redundant by AI? And we've got 0%, it's not going to change it at all. 1 to 25% of what your work is, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, or maybe getting close to 100% of what you do. Now, that probably varies from person to person, but I'd really like to know where your minds are at and how much do you think your team's activities could be automated or made redundant. As I said, I made that question of the guys in HR recently. So, Lavinia, give me a view, because I'm flying a little bit blind because I'm screen sharing, what some of the results look like as they come back. Is there anything interesting? Where are most people placing their bets on the amount?
Somewhere in the middle, I would say. Somewhere in the middle. So we have 44% of the people who answered, which are quite a lot, say that 26 to 50% of our activity in L&D will be automated. Yes.
Wow. Isn't that a lot? What are you going to do with your time? If a quarter and half of it can be automated by AI, isn't that a bit scary? And I think that's something that not only, maybe it's a great opportunity. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say it's scary. I think it's a bit scary. But that's a huge amount, right? And what I'm going to do is I'll give you a view of what HR said, but I also want to pick out what this wonderful guy called Perry Mallum said just last week. And I love this photo. One of my guys in our team who follows marketing, and this is a marketing conference. The guy put this slide up that was taken a photograph by James, who's a friend of our guy in our team. And they used the full expletive, right? I've softened that and I've bleeped that out for here. But on a scale of 1 to how are you? And I think the guys in marketing, right, and I love what James said here, right? He's sat through a conference for 3 days, and after sitting through multiple presentations of how to best leverage AI in the workplace, Perry Mallum finally nails what we're all thinking. This is not good, or is it? Now, what Perry Mallum has done is put it in a really nice article, which I've shared a little bit later on, is AI is not only reshaping the menial tasks, but it's poised to transform the strategic, creative, and managerial roles that have long been considered safe from automation. AI's impact is far more pervasive and disruptive than most marketing professionals expect. Now, what I could do, and what I've started to do, is think about what he says. And this is his article. I put the link up here, so if you download this presentation, you can go and read the article. But this is what marketing guys are saying. 49% screwed. And that sounds very much like 44%, right? We're only 5% out, which is a pretty good margin of error. How AI is going to crush half of marketing. And this is what marketeers are thinking, right? So this is our digital anarchist doing his punk with Drower. And basically what he says is the facts are clear. AI is not only a tool for automating mundane tasks, it is fundamentally altering the landscape of marketing. Those who embrace AI's potential and learn how to integrate it into their workflows will emerge as the leaders of tomorrow. The time is to act now. Marketeers must solve for marketers with must evolve from marketers with some AI tools to strategic AI marketing operators, or they will become obsolete. So if you're feeling a bit apprehensive about what the AI brings for the future, you're not alone in L&D. Marketing feel the same. And what I've done is I've changed this. I've fixed this for learning teams, right? The facts are clear. AI is not just a tool for automating mundane tasks. It will fundamentally alter the landscape of learning. Those who embrace AI and how to integrate it into their workplace will emerge as the leaders for tomorrow. It's time to act is now. L&D must evolve from learning teams with some AI tools to strategic AI L&D operators, or they will become obsolete. And I thought that was just a useful thing to help reinforce this sense of there is some huge change coming. And to go back to the quote at the beginning, we may underestimate the impact today or overestimate today, but we will underestimate its impact in the longer term. And we have to shape that version, that journey as we go. And it's not just marketing and L&D who are taking this seriously. HR are taking the thoughts about AI seriously as well. They see it as increasingly underpinning their success. We've asked this questionnaire of HR leaders for the last, 6 years. And AI was bouncing along the bottom in 2018, 2019, even in 2022. Then 2023 came and we had ChatGPT. And now it's taking over things like even things where HR would say employer brand is the most important thing. It's overtaking that. It's as important as the quality of HR systems. And the only thing that's more important to the success of HR is its future systems. So there is this push. If you're feeling apprehensive about AI, you're not alone. And to come back to my original question, right? This is what the guys in HR said. This is when we've asked them during the summer. We haven't released this data yet. This comes out in November this year. How significant is AI for HR? Over half of HR professionals, you were 44%, they are 53%, think that between 26 and 50%, almost half, could be automated and still be effective. What are we going to do? Right? You're not alone. And I love the synergy. I love the fact that there's a close correlation. Now, in the HR space, this sense of evolution is happening at pace. But of all the areas, it's not uniform, right? So to say AI in HR is not a universal picture. It is a picture that's focused on a few areas where there's been more breakthroughs faster. And of all those, it's talent acquisition that's leading the charge. And what's happening around that is it has a lot of data to process. If you think about the challenges of understanding who the best candidates are, there's a lot of data to filter, and AI can do a lot of filtering and matching to try and suggest maybe the top 10 candidates. After that, you start to very quickly, and I've highlighted this in blue, get into things that are related to you as learning teams. And you may not have reached out to these so far, but they have a huge impact on you. So recruitment, people analytics, workforce intelligence is going to be huge as we go through it. Only 28% feel as though they're getting most impact there. But as we get into learning, we get into skills and capability, we get into talent mobility and career opportunities, which are things that are linked to employee growth and people growth. Actually, that's where people are starting to see impact. But it's not everyone, right? Even seeing most impact, only 23%. And how much impact they're feeling is not revealed in this question. But this gives you a sense of where it's starting to find traction. It gives you a sense that actually your HR peers think that you guys are starting to lead the charge behind the guys in recruiting and talent acquisition. But don't panic. If you're a big follower of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's a bit 70s, but I was a 60s child and I grew up in the 70s, so relevant to me. This is the things that we need to think about, right? And maybe there is a Hitchhiker's Guide to surviving AI somewhere out there. Maybe it's something that could be written on. Maybe that's one for you. But what we're going to go through is what's happening now, why it matters, who's really doing stuff today, and how to think about AI so that it really helps, and how AI is going to change the landscape. That's what I'm going to quickly go through now, and I'm running out of time. So let's think about what's happening now and what matters to L&D around that connection to L&D. Key things to take away are there's a convergence of pressure on L&D around skills, AI, and cost. It's almost a perfect storm for change. If you want to get change, create instability, and strengthening or maybe chilling economic wins, the lack of availability of skills and innovation from AI does create a perfect storm for change. That is driven in the broadest sense. I'm going to take this way out, a little bit away from the HR in a way, in terms of actually when you ask HR what are the biggest significant business challenges, it's the availability of skills, the availability of talent. Beyond that, it's delivering performance, it's reducing cost, economic pressures. And wow, where did that come from? 89% managing AI and automation. That was 7th in the rankings just last year. So there are pressures on businesses to embrace change, embrace the future. And I'll use the strapline that we always hear, which is do more with less or the same. And that comes through. Now, skills matters because over 4 in 5 businesses face shortages of IT skills. 37% of employers have hard to fill vacancies. And we know from our own research, 79% of organizations say they have significant skills gaps. And that covers technical skills, business skills, and people skills, be they hard people skills, interpersonal skills, or intrapersonal skills, how you manage yourself. And that's just again from this year. And what we also know is even to catch up and stay relevant in your current job between 2025 and 2015, going back, went the wrong way, you're likely to have changed your skills by 44% over that 10-year period. And there are 3 new skills that you need to be effective in the same job. So you can't even stand still with your skills in your current role, let alone if you want to move up in an organization and change role. And skills are growing in a priority because actually 70% of you, over 70% have skills gaps in your organizations. And for 75%, 3/4, it's a huge driver of the future success of your organization. And skills, that makes skills a really hot topic, right? And as I said, it's leadership skills, it's team working, it's technical skills, it's interpersonal skills, it's business skills, it's change and project skills. It's not just the CIO, like it said before, 4 in 5 having the technical skills gaps. We also need people who can execute the technology as well. So that is driving, and I'm going to get to the impact for you. That is driving a whole momentum around SBOs or skills-based organizations. And the reason that this has become a hot topic and something that many organizations aspire to become, and something maybe that's always been there, but it's been easier potentially to achieve because of AI. This little robot in the bottom right-hand corner is driving a lot of the profiling at scale. It's doing the skills inference and validation at scale. It creates the skills graph, which links the skills that people have and the individuals that there are to future work opportunities, and enables you to do strategic workforce planning based around what your competitors are doing with their skills and the adverts they're placing, and to your own learning support opportunities. We can create this connection, this personalization from people to work, the future of work, and the learning that they need to do to create recommendations, which then encourage people to do learning, which empowers them to take advantage of new jobs, which drives growth and capability, which takes us on this amazing cycle again. And there is this sense of this driving learning in the future because we have better intelligence about our people, better intelligence about the future of work, and because the people aren't available out in the marketplace, how we can strategically optimize the skills in our business, create the talent pools that we need to grow and thrive in the future. That has a huge impact for you. If you're not connected as an L&D team into the people who own talent ability, which is talent acquisition, who are top of the list in people who are making a difference with AI, then you are out of the loop. But this impacts you severely. And if you're not involved in those conversations, make them happen because it's so crucial. And this is why, to some extent, that this is almost maybe training needs analysis at scale in a broad sense, right? And there's loads of flaws with skills-based organizations. There's loads of hiccups that people are going through in order to get there. This is a point in the journey. We're starting at the beginning. Even when people are crawling, they're well ahead of everybody else. So this is something to watch out for. This will fundamentally change learning over the next 4 to 5 years. Skills-based organizations is not going away in any form or any shape in the next horizon. But this is driving importance around upskilling and reskilling, which also impacts you as a learning team. This, for our survey that we've done around digital learning, this is the first time ever that we have seen upskilling and reskilling beat compliance and regulatory training as the top drivers, the top priority for learning strategy in the year ahead. That has never happened in the last 10 years we've run the survey. And the challenge around that is that when we ask people, how good are you as an L&D team in enabling skills-based development to develop people's skills. Only 17% believe their learning strategy is very effective at developing people's skills. And when you ask people about the things like, do we create enough time for skills? Do we provide enough reward for skills when people develop their skills and the incentives around that? Do we create enough of a connection between career planning and skills and future mobility in the organization? You've got about a 50-50 chance that your organization thinks it's any good, or you as a term, let's say that, what you're doing is good enough for your people. So there's a lot of gaps between understanding, to some extent, what skills are important, where they are, but also from an L&D point of view, how we develop skills. And that's a really important question. And what I want you to do is share in the chat that I can't see. How the hell do you create modern learning experiences that develop skills, right? What are the modern learning experiences that develop skills? And one of the things that I think about when I'm talking about this is content isn't much to do with skills building, right? It doesn't really provide, maybe it provides an element of foundation, but skills is knowledge, behaviors, it's skills and in action. It's being practically applied to tasks. And that's something that if you've got some insight, I'd love for you to share in the chat how you take your learning and make it really skills focused. Now, there's some interesting things that are happening with AI, which makes some of the things that I think make a skills developing much more relevant, much more enabling, and much more realistic to achieve than they've ever been before. But I'm curious about what you've put in the chat. And Lavinia, I'm going to have to call you back because I'm flying a little bit blind on this bit. Did anybody type anything, or is it just an empty space?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see what they might have typed in.
So we have Carl saying that ChatGPT can develop great catered learning plans. We have actually most of the rest of the answers are in a way related to coaching. The idea that coaching will become more important, about AI coaching avatars, coaching and interactive scenarios. Oh my God,
Nice.
answers are coming in. I
Cool.
have to tell you,
Love
there's a
that.
lot
Love.
to be
But this is so important because we've been so used to in the past. Thank you, Lavinia, for dropping in around that. This is so super important because we're so used to providing content to provide knowledge that we need to change the game if we want to enhance people's skills. And that means fundamentally different sorts of learning experience, right? We need to motivate people to get focused. We need to get them into the zone where actually maybe they've done more practice and rehearsal to be ready for work. And I know that's not necessarily a fashionable thing, but it's very stressful not to know what you're going to be doing and meet a customer and be exposed around not knowing how to do something or not having the skill to navigate a particular challenge. It's very stressful in that instance. So to help prepare people to be work ready is really important. And we're probably, because of AI, never been in a better position to help people answer the questions, face those scenarios than we've ever been. And think about the transition, right? And I love all the things that people said back in feedback, coaching, even an AI coach. What does that mean? And if you haven't looked at, and I'm going to go shout out, and I very rarely do this, a lady called Emma Weber has some amazing things around Coach M and a coach bot, which doesn't tell you what to do, right? It's not telling you what to do. It's interesting, super interesting. Anyway, so I'm going to take a step back. I've got half an hour. We'll zip through this bit. So who's really doing stuff with AI in learning today? Maybe scared a little bit of the EBGBs out, you're giving a sense of the future. But overall, when we think about where people are at today and where they think they're going to be tomorrow, it's super interesting, right? Who's not done very much at all? Most, right? Most people have not done a great deal. So as I said, don't panic. If you feel as though you're behind, it's still early days, right? We overestimate what it can do in the short term, underestimate in the long term. Get on the bus, think about how you're going to change learning for skills, how you're going to get more intelligent, and how you focus your learning agenda. That's the blue line, right? Very few are doing a great deal. Very few relatively are doing a lot, right? There's some people who do a moderate amount, really. I'm not so sure. But ultimately, if you feel as though you're behind, you're probably not, unless you haven't done anything at all. Yeah. Now, next year, when we ask people, and this is not my opinion, this is what you told us, You think things are going to change very fast, right? You're going to be doing a lot. Remember what Roy said, right? Roy Amara said, we'll overestimate what we do in the short term. I'm not sure if you're going to get to 30% doing a lot, but maybe you will. But don't be disappointed if it doesn't move as fast as you think, right? But there is really high expectations about the pace of change. And that's probably warranted. As I said, my son doing his automated notes on his computer, recording his tutor, getting flashcards. Wow, that's not what he'd have done last year. But just to say, skepticism is also growing as well. When we ask this question about, do you think the claims for AI are overhyped around learning? The number of people now in the maybe and the yes has gone up a little bit. No is moderated. So we are becoming a little bit more jaded, maybe a little bit more objective about what the potential may be. And that hasn't stopped us, though, still looking at our systems and saying, do you know what? My system isn't doing what I want it to do. Ultimately, my expectations of AI in my LXP, there's only 3% who said their expectations are exceeded. And if anybody is in that 3%, please put in whose LMS you're using or LXP you're using, because everybody else wants to know what has ticked your box around that and what they're doing. So my LMS is what I'm doing. A third say they meet expectations. I bet they don't really. And below expectations is nearly everybody, right? And actually, well, I'm being over dramatic there. 79, say 69%, that's 70% around it. Say it's below expectations. Our expectations are growing, our skepticism is growing, our expectations are high, what the future will bring. But what are people using? Not a great deal. And what we've done is we've started to shift lots of our focus into things, and I'm going to go from the top to the bottom around media generation. Oh, I can do some nice new images that I didn't have the skills before, and that's where people are already using it. And people are thinking about piloting that, a small number, implementing a smaller number, considering for the future. Everybody's considering everything for the future, but really the things that are biting now. AI for translations, yeah, that's a pretty good answer. Maybe may not be 100% accurate. And we hear a lot about the accuracy being a challenge for that. But if you couldn't afford to do translations and now they're accessible, wow, that's a pretty good answer. LMS, LXP, 20% are already using some sort of AI in that, 6% piloting. Most people not doing much, right? AI recommendations from content. You're more likely to get a recommendation, interesting recommendation out of a talent and skills platform than you are from your learning platform, because they've got the skills and the future work. Generative AI for learning authoring. Wow, 13%, but that's the hot topic, right? We want to create more authoring sooner rather than later. And I can go through more of these. Let's see, so 10%. Now, down the bottom, it starts to fade away. The people who are actually already using. So performance support. Wow, wouldn't it be great to have performance support? Who does performance support at the moment for anything in their learning? No hands really go up, right? Nobody does that, but we're not doing it now. Heaven's sake, that's a great opportunity to create this maybe more learning in the flow of work. That's going to be a big game changer. I think there's some really interesting things down here where I can see these being a bigger change in learning over time than the ones that we've got up here, because the ones up here, the top ones that I'm going down, typically they're doing the things that we've already done, and some of those things won't create anyway. Whereas we get down to the bottom, adaptive learning. Wow, to have personalized learning that flexes to me as an individual as I go through it, and as I test out, helps me get to the optimal path. That sounds amazing. So why aren't we doing more of that and less of this stuff, right? Who needs an AI-enabled LMS when you can have learning that is truly personalized? And surely it's about raising the bar. So just to go back to the don't panic bit, and I'm swinging around a little bit, but I just want to say don't panic that actually only a third are already using some of this stuff, right? That'd be a high number. I'm lying there because it's saying 20%. Some are piloting, most aren't doing anything. Everybody's thinking about this for the future. Some of these are more interesting and much more transformational than others. The biggest cost that you have around learning is not how much you pay for the learning, it's how long it takes for your people to go through the learning content or the learning experiences when they're not being productive. So these things are going to change. But as I said, don't feel overly concerned that you're not on the boat or on that bus at the moment. Get on it soon. The other thing is just to say why people are adopting AI. Efficiency improving the learning effectiveness, optimizing learning delivery. It is the story of economics that I highlighted earlier on. Do more with less or the same, or improve it. The main reasons are about effectiveness. I think cost comes into this. And that's why I put a skeptical really in there. If the economics don't improve, then you will be cut unless you are driving higher value. Higher value comes from more skills development and enabling the business to execute on its future plans. But the budgets are biting, right? For the first time for a while, since last year, we've had people finding it harder to spend money. There's more people who are changing or delaying investment in technology than there are people who are accelerating their adoption of technology. So you do need a strong business case. That could be headcount, it could be other things. But regardless of that, where people are looking to spend their money as relates to digital learning is around AI for content authoring. And so where do you expect to invest your digital learning for the year ahead? That's cool, right? 51% are going to increase their spend on AI supported content authoring. Only 2% reduce their spend. Everybody else I've included in it here because this is like a swingometer. So they're just sat in the middle saying no change. But what we're going to do, we're going to outsource our digital learning team. I can do it cheaper if I use AI content authoring. And unless it was maybe really interesting content, maybe I can get to the same level of quality without disrupting the outputs. So that's a real interesting maneuver, right? Upskill my team, more learning services, learning platforms. Actually, digital is the way to go, but maybe not so much for outsourcing, when there's maybe a little bit of a negative drag. Now, you can see this AI content for authoring just being an isolated thing. You can see it's just being a standalone. It's just about AI content authoring for my existing team. That's probably not the case. When we ask people about how they're going to resource their projects for the year ahead, there is two interesting things in this chart. They're the big green bars here. One related to AI supporting content creation, which I sort of asked before, but the other thing is upskilling subject matter experts. Now, we could see these things as being separated, or we might see these things as being fundamentally linked, because if I can get my subject matter experts to create more interesting and better content, maybe that isn't a bad answer, especially if I didn't have the resources or the cost or the people or the time to do it better for them, or if it was just a simple piece of content that didn't need anything else, right? So in some ways, AI looks as though it may be helping us sort of go to this place of user-generated content revisited, right? And again, the drag is around hiring more full-time employees. Oh, no, we're not going to hire more people. Are we going to outsource our projects? No, not going to outsource more projects. Are we going to use external contracts and external contractor marketplaces? I don't want to spend outside, right? Engaging specific contractors, maybe using internal talent marketplaces, using our own resources, redeploying existing L&D team members. There is a sense of self-sufficiency, which AI may bite more the vendors than it will bite the buyers, if you want to keep things at a flat level. And that's something that I'd read into the numbers here about how people are planning to resource in the time ahead. Now, that's not necessarily uniform. It's not necessary for all sorts of learning experiences. But I think if it's entry-level learning experiences, maybe that sort of bronze quality, out of a bronze, silver, bronze, gold, silver, bronze sort of quality of content you could think in your mind, maybe it takes away the bronze and the silver. And we need to do more with less because the economic pressures are high and I need to do things which I couldn't otherwise do. So I need to take a breath. I need to have a sip of my tea. And this is where I asked Lavinia to say, so when we think about AI and its relationship to the learning experience, do we think it's a race to the bottom? And a simple question, yes or no. So Lavinia, I need you to do your magic again and help us sort of share attendees, if they're still there, haven't disappeared. What does this mean? Does AI mean a race to the bottom in the learning experience? Yes or no? And I'd love to hear what people think. Is it going to take us to more rubbish content generated at volumes that we've never even thought we could do? Or are we going to pivot into doing better things with maybe less effort? Interesting. So, Lavinia.
are coming in, but I
Oh,
would say that there's definitely a resounding no, because
oh,
94% of our audience said no, and at the moment, only 6% said yes.
excellent. Now, I love optimism, and I think we shape our future. So, again, if in the chat, I can't see reasons. Why do you think it will not mean a race to the bottom? What is it that's going to stop us doing that race to the bottom? Because that maybe helps us convince the 6% who thought that it is a race to the bottom. And I am super optimistic. I thought you're going to be a bit more 50-50. But my answer was a bit like Schrodinger's learning quality cat. I don't know if you ever know the Schrodinger's cat experiment. They lock a cat in with some radioactive material, and Schrodinger says the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. You only know when you open the box. And it's a very famous thought experiment, Schrodinger's cat, hence the cat here. And I think the answer is yes and no. If we only use AI to create the content that we've always created, and we're not doing something better, and we're just using it for content production, we are going to get more rubbish content faster. If we think that we can do richer learning, we can harness the AI to create more interactive learning, which harnesses a more, maybe just think, immersive experience, but that can augment learning cycles, right? It can act as the good angel on our shoulder that says, David, you should have spoken to Don because you haven't done your feedback on how well you did the presentation, and get some tips for having less slides in your deck, and all those sorts of things, right? So getting that feedback, augmenting our relationship with learning, then I think there's something that AI can be more than a paperclip. It can be our friend that keeps us honest, gives us the intelligence to make better decisions, and add to the personalization. So I think we're going to live with this Schrodinger's learning quality, if I can call it that. We can end up with a yes and a no. We have to choose where we apply it to get those answers, because sometimes actually doing things cheaper is the right answer, when there was no choice to do anything else. But what I want to do is focus on the yes bit, right? Now, this is old. This is from PwC. They did a report. There are links in here, which you can always go to. This is Business Insider report from 2020, right? PwC used some 3D immersive environment to train out around diversity, equity, inclusion. What they found was it was more effective. And I'll go into why, but what we're seeing in some of the providers, and this is my hope around AI, is whilst you used to have opportunities to create this yourself, my God, did it take a lot of time to create the pathways, add in the distractors, create the reactions, and create the storylines, which took you to 5 different endings at different points. It was incredibly complex to create these scenarios. They were immersive, they were really interesting, but you had to choose from a multi-tick list. Already what we're seeing in many of these maybe more immersive approaches is the person is starting to react to what you say. You don't have to have a choice of options. The authoring of the branches to the endpoints, which are good and bad, they're being done with the support of the AI. So you can get to a minimum viable product around this much faster than you ever could. Now, the reason I highlight this is, and I wanted to pick out this immersive learning report, because this sort of sits on its own legs as why you should do more immersive learning to help people rehearse and practice. It's 4 times faster than classroom training. It's almost 4 times more emotionally connected to learners. They get more immersed in the outcomes. It's 4 times more focused in terms of learner experience than traditional learning, and it's almost 3 times more, makes people 3 times more confident about what they've learned after the training. Now, if we can get to that answer using AI to help us co-create, co-author, coordinate across our teams to get to the answer faster, to create this practice and rehearsal, to make our people ready, that is a good answer. And that's why I think, well, one of the reasons why I think learning will never be the same again, because it's enabling us to reach into things that were harder to do. Now, this report is freely available, it's downloadable from the PwC website even. That's 3 years old. It is the go-to reference point for immersive learning. Immersive learning doesn't have to be a headset, it can be 2D as well. Create the scenario, allow people to practice, put the voice out there. And even with presentation training, and this is a screenshot from you to present to a virtual audience. This is the virtual audience down here. Wish I'd done that myself. It talks about how fast you've spoken. Mine's probably about 70 words a second. And eye contact, no eye contact because I can't see you. But where have I looked? Have I engaged the whole room? What words have I used? What language? This is the sorts of precise precision feedback that I expect us to get to when we think about 5 years out. Well, it's available now, right? But it should become more pervasive as we get out there and think about how we influence and how we communicate and how we allow people to practice and rehearse things that we want them to know before they go into a work situation. So, got to take away. I've got 10 minutes. I'm just going to take you through some ways to think about AI in learning and think about how it helps you and how it will change learning beyond content. And that's my little hashtag, beyond content. We're obsessed with content. We do too much content delivery. How is AI going to change this? Now, the way we think about what we do significantly influences how we expect technology to support us in the future. And I want to think about AI's impact in two specific lenses. One is about your function as a learning operation, and the other is about the learning experience. And I picked out a couple of models here. The first is about learning operations, right? Now, when you think about what you do as a learning team and think about how can AI help me do these things better? And that's the premise, right? You need to be pushing your suppliers about what I do, can you make it better or take away some of the drudge work? That's what TA have done really well. Drudge work is reading through 5,000 CVs to work out who's even relevant for a particular job. What is it in what you do? And I've broken this down into key phases of partnering, solutioning, delivery and executing, innovating and managing. This is what I think about when I go back to, well, was it 20 years ago when I was leading Virgin Media's team around learning solutions and technologies. We thought about the strategic value. We engaged, we influenced our business around what you need help with, where the strategic focus, what data do we have, and what do we need to improve. Then we break that down into context and personas. So who needs to do what, by when, and how much better they need to be. And then we think about value phases. We think about, so what needs to impact by who, by when? Because nobody can wait a year for me to develop this training program. The world changes even in 3 months. So when can I start to drive value for these people around this strategic agenda? And then we go up with a solution, right? We start to create content. We think about learning cycles. We think about different phases of the cycle. We think about how we'd engage people. We think about actually what does the learning feel like as a blend, sometimes just as a straight off course. And then once we designed it, we'd then put it into execution. We'd launch it and we'd send the learner into the workplace. We'd send them to work with their teams. We'd bring them into learning. We'd send them to study on their own, sadly, too often. And sometimes that person would just think, I want to know something, and they'd find what we'd created. Ideally, we'd measure the outcomes, and then we think about innovation, about how we improve these things. And maybe there's governance control if you're not in the Wild West and you need some more technology, you have to get that approved, right? Across that life cycle, there are things that AI can enable if you think about it. And Miles, who is enjoying some great food in Vietnam, who was my, I don't know, riding shotgun last time, or maybe he was reading the horses, right? He's come up with a list of things, and you can download this. We'll share the presentation as a PDF so you can use this yourselves. Said, well, this is some of the things that you'll be able to use AI for. Strategic workforce planning, that can play into here about what the priorities for the organization are. Employee assistance, understanding personal challenges. Like I mentioned Coach M before, if we can ask every manager what their top 3 challenges are, how close they are to completing them, and say what they're going to do to move the dial on their top 3 challenges and where they're going to take them from a 3 to a 5. We have a perfect training needs analysis for every manager in the organization. We can start to push them the sort of learning that they might need. So we can start to get a much better view of actually what is the strategy? What value can we provide as an L&D team? And I can go across these. I haven't got time probably, but just think about this sense of actually when we start to think about individual skills, profiling, do the analysis, the personalization around career planning. I know where everybody wants to go and how close they are to a match. If we're using the internal talent acquisition tools to say, oh, you're a 78% match for that future role that you're interested in, we can start to push them into gigs, roles. We can give them push around assignments. We can give a push around these things in terms of learning or accreditations may add to your employability. I can't guarantee there's a career here, but I can help you build your employability around the relevant things which drive strategy. And we can think about what the risks are, etc. So you can go through this, right? So even when we get into agile solution design, we can start to source the content and do content analysis using AI to make a recommendation of course outline and so on. And I'm sure you can add in your own things here, right? Curriculum design, diagnostic. Now, it's not to say that we don't have human in the loop, but if we can feed in all the subject matter experts' resources, we can at least accelerate us spending a week reading through all those resources to get to a suggested plan and accelerate ourselves through the process without even getting into the execution. So loads of little bullet points down here. This is almost the future landscape for a learning management system. If anybody's interested, maybe I should have patented it. But this is also a future roadmap for how will learning change. Now, most of the effort has been focused around agile solutioning. It's been focused around advocacy and delivery. So the actual delivering of the content. Very little on the measurement. Wouldn't that be great? We're seeing some interesting maneuvers from guys who deal in employee engagement to understand other data sources. So are people who are trained really that much more engaged? Are they driving higher performance in your organization? So this triangulation almost of total people intelligence of skills, engagement, advocacy, and learning and skills profile. Wow, there's a lot coming still. And these are the boundary areas that you probably need to be scanning, and some of these exist outside of learning. Now, I've gone through a little bit of this. You can download this, you can go and look through. But what I'm trying to say is AI will not just change our solutioning. It will not just change delivery. There are inputs at every phase of a learning operation that you will start to adopt as time goes by. And I'm thinking about Roy Amarasan, the short amount of change in the short term, bigger change in the long term. When I get to his age, I expect these things to be built out, and I will be holding you to account if they happen. The other side of this, and I just want to highlight this before you open up some questions, is this sense of enabling a total learning experience. Now, for a long time, while everybody else was running around to set up to 70-20-10, I was talking about workplace learning, collaborative learning, and formal learning, and the overlaps. Now, this becomes really important as we think out to the future of the role of AI and technology in changing the learner experience. And this is all about the touch points for learning. If we think about the touch points for learning in the corporate workflow, it is around coaching. That coaching could become part human, could be part AI. That gives us a connection, maybe into mentoring. Once we understand what people's priorities are, maybe we still want to start to make recommendations around what mentors we have. Maybe it's about mentors and our peers giving us day-to-day feedback, which influences our focus on resources that we may want to access as part of our work or courses that we want to go on. But increasingly, the learner experience is not just the LMS. And maybe when we did this all those years ago, we saw it as never being just about the LMS. It's about the learning experience and where those touch points are, either in workspaces. Think about Teams and Slack. Think about actually doing your work system type activities. These things start to get connected, and skills starts to overlay this. Our knowledge base starts to overlay this. There are other sources for learning, and that learning experience is something that increasingly, if we have learning systems that think they are the only destination, the only touch point, I do not see that as a long-term strategy. There is a thing that is emerging across IT, which is called a MAC architecture. It's about microservices, project-based learning, performance management, mentoring, Maybe it's about resources. Maybe it's about a knowledge base. Maybe it's about forums and chat. But microservices are the expression of the particular task that a solution solves. You don't necessarily have to go to the LMS, or you don't want to go to the LMS to find where your mentors are. API means the connection, right? So the connection between mentoring and the insights we have around coaching, that is an API, that's connection. Cloud just means it's in the cloud, so it's not on premise. And headless is the key thing. That's what Mac architecture stands for. Microservices, API, cloud, and headless. And headless means that even though my learning management system or LXP system may exist, actually where I see it is in the workflow. And this is why this becomes really helpful, because I think if we look to the future, increasingly the good solutions are going to be the ones that surface their intelligence, all the things that they know, into the context of where somebody's primary touch points are. And you don't have to log in because it came to you. Now, I remember being in a room with a company called Docent back in the early 2000s saying nobody wants to go to an LMS. They want to go to a portal which is relevant, or they just want to be given it, having their learning experience given to them where they are. We're still not really there, but I think this mark architecture, thinking about where learning really happens and how it really happens, will change our learning systems in a significant way over the next 3 or 4 years. And we're going to see that come through. The other thing, and I'll leave this on screen before we go to questions, is this sense of what AI enables. This is a learning cycle, and you can come up with your own learning cycle, but please think about how we continuously create a cycle of learning that enables a person to feel as though they're growing, right? We start with measurement, we help them analyze, we help them plan what they're going to do, and that could happen in a split second, or it could be a long-term fundamental change to get them up to being an effective leader in their organizations or a manager. They learn stuff, and then we help them apply it. We help them sustain their learning before we understand, has it made a difference? All these things, all these little subpoints could be augmented by AI if we choose to put the pressure on our providers to do that. And I'll leave you to search through this because I'm sort of running out of time and I do need to go to some questions. But just wanted to say is we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run. That's what Roy Charles Amara says. I'm going to be his age, and hopefully I'll still be breathing in 2046. That is the blink of an eye. I'll tell you that from somebody who's starting to feel old. That's not long away. I expect lots of things I've talked about to be real by the time I'm pushing up the daisies like Roy. There's a lot to come. And I think the biggest risk of what we do with technology as we look out to the next 5, 10 years, 15 years, is that we'll just think only cheaper, only faster. But what we've done so far with learning technology and learning has often not been that great. And if that is the only thing that we're going to do, then I think, bless him, Perry Mallon is right. We're on a scale of 1 to not being very happy. So that's it. Now, we are doing a project at Fosway. If you're interested in registering your interest around this AI and learning project, please reach out to us at info@fosway.com. But we have questions. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. There we go. Let's wrap it up there. And the cat can be entertained. Now
I
I've got to
would
try
have
and
liked that cat
how.
to be more.
I got to try and work out how I get out of. Yeah, I remember. Here we go. Stop sharing. I love the cat.
Yes.
Let's try.
So
Here
we
we go.
already have some questions. I will let you breathe for a second,
That's
and
right.
I will
Yeah, I'm trying
tell
to talk fast.
everyone else to just to drop any other questions you have
Yeah.
in the chat or in the questions tab. And let's get started with Lisa's question because she was
Oh,
the first, and it
oh,
is:
thank you, Lisa.
how should organizations handle that the employees use their own personal login to, for example, ChatGPT as a tool?
Good luck. Oh, it's tough, right? We're in the age, I'm too old, right? I remember not being allowed to go on Google to find stuff out, and now we think, How stupid is that, right? Why wouldn't you want people to find the answer? Now, probably what you do need to do is get your IT guys to say what's allowed, what's not allowed. You probably need to work with your IT guys to make sure you have your own LLMs, which are relevant, so large language models, which are relevant to your organization, that they create a firewall around the secure information. Probably the key thing is you're not going to be able to control it. So help educate people how to use it properly in anonymizing data, not sharing your best secrets with ChatGPT so it leaks everywhere else out into the world. But you're not going to stop it. It's like checking a peanut, charging a rhinoceros. Good luck. Help people understand how to ride that beast. Yeah. And help them understand what's good and bad. Maybe just help them also create really great prompts so they're even more effective than they could be. Yeah. Sorry, Lisa. The cat. What's the word? The cat's out of the bag.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Mariana. She's asking, where does the definition and targeting of learning objectives fit into the learning experience and AI model, I think?
I go back and I didn't spend enough time talking about learning cycles. Objectives come from understanding where you are today. Right? If you're going to have good learning objectives, you need to excite people and motivated people about where they need to be. So I think the starting point has to be real business data. It has to be real feedback. It has to be a measure of success that we have today and an understanding of where those success needs to be in the future. So sadly, most learning platforms do not provide you with any reference point for gathering any of those information or helping you navigate or helping your individual navigate through what they should do next. Sad, but true. So where do you start? I would recommend just encouraging managers and individuals to start to have those conversations about what does it take to be a great X? Yeah. What does it take to be? And you can have that as a team conversation, right? And then start to reflect, how great am I at that? And what could I improve? Right. That'll give you really strong learning objectives and give you the internal motivation and the external connection to say, I said I was going to be better than this. Okay, you can hold me to account. So I hope that's a quick answer, Lisa. And oh, sorry, that's the wrong name. But yeah, I hope that's right. Sorry, Lavinia, you have to remind me who it was. I should have written it down.
Yeah, Mariana.
Mariana, sorry, Mariana. Apologies for saying the wrong name. Cognitive load.
No worries. Okay, and this, I believe, last question. It's honestly very interesting from Maggie. Would like to hear your ideas. How can we make learning equitable and inclusive, especially with a big skills gap of employees? Because some people find basic IT challenging.
Yeah, it's difficult. Right. I would say take a person-centered approach, help people not be lone in their studying and their learning, help them buddy up, help them be partnered, make them feel part of a group or a team or just a single relationship where they aren't alone. I think that's the first thing. I think if you want to be equitable, actually, it's about creating a community and then things will rise. I think in terms of some people not being necessarily as technically adept, we live in a technical world, right? And maybe there is something about helping those people who feel more vulnerable to build their confidence and competence in using technology. So maybe that's one of the first questions you can ask: who needs help navigating this? And then supporting them, right? And that's where that peer-to-peer, that buddying can help, because you get the gift of somebody helping someone else, you also get the gift of being helped. And I think that's your only starting point. At the end of this day, the geeks rule the world, I'm sorry to say. And if you're a geek, well done. Everybody else, we got to start running to catch up and demand easier systems, easier solutions, more humanity. But it's not just the technical skills, right? It is about the people skills, and that is about our intrapersonal skills. That's our resilience. That's our willingness to learn, the willingness to take an open view, try things and maybe feel less fear of failure. but it's also interpersonal skills, right? It's our ability to energize others. It's our ability to create connection, to create followership, to excite and energize. These are really important things. So in terms of equity, set targets as well for what equity looks like in your organization and be relentless in pushing. That's what I'd say.
Okay. Well, I am glad that we're ending on such a positive note about humanity and connection. We're getting lots of thanks in the chat to David, and I have to thank you as well for joining us and for sharing so much data about what's happening at this intersection between AI and L&D. And if you can send any links to the research that you presented, feel free to put it here in our chat, and we'll make sure to get that over to our audience. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for everyone, and hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, and thank you for joining us. And don't leave very far away, because there is another session coming up. It's proving impact, why the expectations of L&D are different now, and how we can establish success with Andrew Jacobs. Feel free to join that one as well. It's been a pleasure. Have a nice day. Bye.